Though I have to tell you, I had to be clever because I was doing these new works and I wasn't getting any credit for it. I worked with Stephen Islis, who was a very famous cellist. There was a piece written for cello and voice. It was all in Russian, a fantastic piece. And there was, I did a little recording with Stephen, and that record came up for a Mercury Award. John Tavener was invited to the ceremony. Stephen Islis was there, and various other artists, and I was the only one who wasn't invited. And I suddenly thought, I'm losing out here. Why? I also did a recording with a violinist, an English violinist, and she got a photo session with John Tavener, paid for by somebody else. So then I thought, you know, I've got to do something about this. And so I booked myself a PR agent. It was at vast expense. I decided for 6 months I was going to get a PR person. And it did the trick, because she said, I can't guarantee you anything, but I'll work for you for 6 months. And she had a young assistant who was completely new, no preconceived ideas, and she went to the Times, she went to the BBC, she went to absolutely everywhere. She interviewed John Tavener on the phone and got a quote which said, Miss Rozario is my muse, which she used to great effect, and suddenly everybody knew that he'd written already about 7 or 8 works for me. And soon after that, you know, a while after that, people said, well, this is a really good relationship. I mean, it's a bit like Benjamin Britten and Peter Pearce, and there's Francis Poulenc, who's a French composer, and his friend Bernac. They wrote for particular voices. Even to this day, there are composers. There's a composer.
The other ones who wrote for Whitman.
No. They wrote for each other. So Peter Pearce is a tenor, and his partner was Benjamin Britten. And Britten absolutely always insisted that Pearce sang his music the first time. After that, anyone else could pick it up. But I remember I read recently there was one production where the management insisted that, I think it was Billy Budd, one of his operas, they didn't want Peter Pearce. And that was the only opera that was a bit of a failure when it was premiered, you know. So, but anyway, now there are composers who have particular singers that they write for, and nobody questions them, you know, because a composer has a certain sound in their mind, and they write for that voice. And when I've spoken to Tavener recently, you know, he said that he actually hears my voice when he composes. So I feel I've been blessed in a way. On the other hand, there was an occasion when I had gone to France and auditioned successfully in Nancy to do a Handel opera, Alcina, and they'd offered me Morgana, which is a beautiful role. But at the same time, my agent, whom I didn't know at the time, was not really working for me at this point. Things were changing from their point of view. And they introduced me at that time to a composer who'd written a work, a modern piece, and they said, oh, he's written it with your voice in mind. And they said, at least meet the guy. So I went and I met the composer, and the director was there as well. It wasn't easy. Every bar was a different set of beats, and there was no regularity in the phrases. So I looked at it and I sang through some of it with him, but I was on the verge of turning it down because I thought, I'd rather do the Handel. And then when I told the agent that, they said, oh, but he's so upset. He's written it for you, and how can you turn him down? And you went to meet him. And, you know, because my son was little at the time, I thought, okay, I'll stay in England and I'll do this opera in Leeds. It's not so far away. But I didn't realize what I was letting myself in for, because I lost the Handel opera. And do you know, the agent sent another singer to France to do that opera. So they were manipulating me unawares. And I went to Leeds and I did that opera, and I think I nearly had a nervous breakdown because the music was so difficult. And at one stage, the conductor who gave us our every entry suddenly said, you know, the orchestra can't cope. I've got to give them their entries, so I'm afraid I can't give you your entries. And we nearly went on strike because that's not possible. We need you. Anyway, in the end, it worked, and you know, it was fine, but it was a very hard experience. And to this day, I regret not doing that Handel opera, because it closed down in France for me for a while. But I've since started doing some recital work in France.
The Handel opera would have been quite time would have been so.
Yeah, I've done a fair amount of Handel opera in Germany, but not in France. I've done Mozart in France. I did Don Giovanni. I did one of the other earlier Mozart operas. In England, I've done Idomeneo at Kleinborn, and I've done some Vivaldi in France. But in Germany, I did several Handel operas, and they're wonderful. In Austria as well, there's a Handel festival. I've done a lot of Handel. It's very good for the voice.
Unfortunately, if you've been around in Handel's time, you wouldn't have had a crack at the role. It would have been sung by a male castrato.
I'm not sure. I thought that Handel, am I not right that he wrote for particular women? No?
Male singers.
Male singers, yeah, I know.
He wrote for particular male singers who sang like women.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, I see what you mean. I think I'm thinking of Mozart. Mozart wrote, again, you see, this is very a tradition that composers hear what's around, they connect with a particular voice, and some singers can do things that other singers can't do. So the composer would write the work for that particular singer, and you know, it just, that's the way it's been.
Now, I had the privilege a while back of hearing you and Mark work with a group of young people at the Kala Academy. And I was struck with the fact that first you have the technical part that is done separately, and then you go through the technical exercises for the voice. And then together you work on musicianship and interpretation and the language and all this kind of thing. Back in Handel's time, Porpora, the great voice teacher, had a pupil called Caffarelli, who for 5 years was made to sing only scales. And finally he asked Porpora, when are you going to teach me to sing? And Porpora then said to him, you have nothing more to learn, you are the greatest singer in the world. Now I doubt that singing scales for 5 years could make you the greatest singer in the world when there's so much more to learn that has nothing to do with scales.
Wow, but you know, those people, they were Italian. Most of the music at that time was Italian. So they knew the language. And it was their music. Whereas here in India, it's not our tradition. So we have to teach the students to understand the different styles.
But there are so many more languages now that are...
Yes, that's true as well. There are so many languages. But my method of teaching is also based on the Italian method. And I spend half an hour in every lesson doing exercises. Some teachers at the Royal College where I teach don't believe in exercises, but I think the exercises go through the range. So you develop a consistency of tone, you learn to access the higher range with ease and effortlessly, but good sound, you know, and I think that repetition is very good. Then you have to show them, or some singers connect quite easily with how to bring that resonance into a new song, you know, because you sing a set of texts focusing on vowels. Those vowels will open up and be resonant. Now you have to bring that resonance to a new song where you've got a new set of notes and a new set of text, and that can be tricky, but it's not difficult. I just think, you see, 3 years ago my husband and I were invited to come to Bombay. I mean, you know, I don't mean to be critical, but I think we haven't had Western music in our school.